My daughter-in-law Patricia had no idea that when she banished me to stay in the back bedroom like the other old furniture, she was actually disrespecting Eleanor Rose Blackwell, the anonymous real estate mogul who owned a $280 million property empire that included half the luxury apartment buildings in downtown Seattle, controlled the housing market in 3 counties, and could turn her comfortable suburban life into the most expensive lesson about respecting elders that any entitled daughter-in-law had ever received. Before we dive into how I pulled off the most legendary real estate power move in family history, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I'm sharing the story of how a restaurant server who was consistently stiffed by rude customers turned out to own the entire restaurant chain, and what happened when she revealed herself during the lunch rush. The systematic humiliation that had become my daily reality in my son Michael's modest 3-bedroom ranch house at 1247 Oak Grove Drive in the quiet suburb of Millbrook began innocently enough 18 months after my beloved husband Frank's funeral, when Patricia started making helpful suggestions about how a woman my age should simplify her living arrangements and not burden young families with the complications of multigenerational housing that made raising children and maintaining modern lifestyles unnecessarily challenging for couples who were still building their futures. The transformation from loving grandmother to unwelcome houseguest happened so gradually that Michael never noticed how his wife's initial kindness toward his grieving mother had slowly morphed into barely concealed irritation and systematic efforts to make me feel like an intruder in what she increasingly referred to as her home. What started as gentle suggestions about giving us family time evolved into strict schedules for when I could use common areas, explicit rules about which kitchen appliances I was permitted to operate, and increasingly frequent comments about how independent living facilities might be more appropriate for someone at my stage of life. The carefully crafted persona that I had maintained since moving into their spare bedroom following Fr. Ang's sudden heart attack perfectly embodied every stereotype about elderly widows who depend on their adult children's charity and goodwill. My appearance alone told the complete story that Patricia wanted to believe a 73-year-old grandmother who wore the same rotation of practical cardigans from JCPenney, sensible walking shoes with thick soles for stability, and carried a worn brown leather purse that had clearly seen better decades but was maintained with the kind of careful attention that suggested both limited resources and deep attachment to familiar possessions. The morning routine that Patricia observed during her increasingly frequent inspections of her home included my careful preparation of simple meals using only the most basic ingredients purchased, with carefully counted cash, my systematic attention to keeping my few belongings confined to the small back bedroom and shared bathroom, and my apparent confusion about modern household technology that required her patient explanation and frequent asks. Tons. The image of a helpless elderly woman who needed guidance with smart TV remotes, struggled with smartphone applications, and couldn't quite grasp the complexity of their home security system provided perfect evidence of my supposed limitations and technological dependency. My daily schedule reinforced every assumption about elderly lifestyle limitations and social isolation. Patricia watched me spend long hours reading library books in my small bedroom, carefully organizing my medications and weekly pill containers, and maintaining the kind of quiet, unobtrusive presence that convinced her she was dealing with a woman whose world had shrunk to the basic necessities of survival rather than someone who had spent for decades building an empire that stretched across 3 states and influenced municipal development policies throughout the Pacific Northwest. The financial constraints that I displayed through careful attention to grocery store coupons, systematic comparison shopping for basic necessities, and apparent anxiety about unexpected expenses created exactly the kind of elderly poverty narrative that convinced Patricia she was dealing with a financial burden rather than recognizing the sophisticated wealth management and strategic anonymity that had been carefully constructed to protect both family relationships and business operations from unnecessary complications. social pressures, and the kind of family dynamics that money often complicates in ways that destroy authentic relationships and create artificial dependencies. The wardrobe that filled my small bedroom closet consisted entirely of practical clothing that told a story of careful budgeting and simple taste preferences: polyester blouses in muted colors, comfortable slacks with elastic waistbands, and cardigans that prioritized warmth over style. The absence of jewelry except for my simple gold wedding band, the sensible shoes that prioritized comfort over fashion, and the basic winter coat that had clearly been purchased for function rather than appearance, created comprehensive evidence of limited discretionary income and the kind of practical living choices that adult children expect from elderly parents who depend on fixed incomes to maintain their independence. The prescription medication routine that characterized my daily health management included generic medications stored in basic weekly pill organizers, Medicare paperwork carefully filed in manila folders, and the kind of healthcare expense anxiety that demonstrated careful attention to medical costs and insurance coordination. Patricia observed my systematic comparison shopping for prescription prices, my apparent confusion about insurance coverage details, and my preference for generic brands over name-brand medications, all of which provided additional evidence of fixed income limitations and the complex healthcare navigation challenges that many elderly individuals face when managing chronic conditions on restricted budgets. The transportation limitations that defined my apparent mobility included careful attention to bus schedules for medical appointments, systematic avoidance of unnecessary driving that might strain my limited transportation budget, and dependence on Michael and Patricia for assistance with errands that required highway navigation or complex route planning. My 2009 Honda Civic, with its basic features, careful maintenance schedule, and obvious aging, provided perfect evidence of the kind of practical vehicle choices that elderly individuals make when transportation needs must be balanced against limited financial resources and reduced driving confidence. The social isolation that had characterized my lifestyle since Frank's death provided Patricia with comprehensive evidence of loneliness and dependency that made her controlling behavior appear like practical household management rather than systematic elder abuse designed to eliminate my comfort and dignity while positioning herself as the primary authority figure in what she considered her family domain. My apparent lack of close friendships, limited community connections, and dependence on family members for social interaction created the perfect foundation for her belief that I had nowhere else to go and no other options for independent living arrangements. The grocery shopping coordination that Patricia occasionally observed during our joint errands provided systematic documentation of careful expense management and budget limitations that excluded consideration of premium food products or sophisticated dietary preferences. My systematic use of store loyalty cards, my attention to weekly sales advertisements, and my preference for generic brands over name-brand products demonstrated exactly the kind of financial consciousness that convinced her I was operating on severely restricted resources while carefully managing every dollar to maintain basic nutritional needs without compromising other essential expenses. The technology struggles that I demonstrated whenever Patricia attempted to help me with basic computer functions or smartphone operations provided systematic evidence of generational learning gaps and cognitive challenges that she interpreted as typical elderly limitations rather than strategic performance designed to maintain the appearance of technological incompetence and information management dependency. When she tried to show me how to use streaming services, online banking, or social media platforms, I responded with appropriate confusion about security procedures, systematic anxiety about internet safety, and repeated requests for clarification about basic navigation that convinced her of my complete technological illiteracy. The home maintenance coordination that I requested Michael's assistance with included minor household repairs, basic property upkeep, and the kind of physical tasks that demonstrated age-related limitations and practical dependency needs. My apparent difficulty reaching high shelves, managing heavy objects, And coordinating complex maintenance projects created compelling evidence of elderly independence challenges, while my systematic expressions of gratitude for family assistance reinforced the narrative of dependency and limited capability that Patricia found both convenient and psychologically satisfying. The financial planning confusion that I demonstrated during conversations about retirement security and future care needs included apparent anxiety about healthcare costs, systematic concern about maintaining independence, and the kind of elderly financial worries that Patricia interpreted as evidence of limited resources and planning capability rather than strategic information gathering about family attitudes and exploitation potential. My questions about Medicare benefits, my apparent confusion about long-term care insurance, and my systematic expressions of concern about becoming a burden provided comprehensive evidence of elderly financial vulnerability and dependency anxiety. The medical appointment coordination that required family transportation assistance included regular visits to various specialists, prescription management consultations, and the kind of healthcare navigation that demonstrated both physical limitations and cognitive challenges with complex medical system coordination. Patricia observed my apparent difficulty understanding insurance procedures, my systematic confusion about specialist referrals, and my preference for family accompaniment during medical consultations, all of which created perfect evidence of elderly healthcare dependency and medical management limitations. The evening routine that characterized my daily schedule included early bedtime coordination, simple entertainment preferences, and the kind of quiet lifestyle that convinced Patricia she was dealing with a woman whose energy and interests had significantly diminished with age. My apparent preference for basic television programming, simple reading materials, and minimal social stimulation created systematic evidence of cognitive decline and social withdrawal that reinforced her assumptions about elderly capability, limitations, and lifestyle simplification needs. The meal preparation approach that I demonstrated during family dinner coordination included careful attention to simple recipes, basic cooking techniques, and the kind of culinary limitations that suggested both declining skills and equipment familiarity challenges. My apparent confusion about modern kitchen appliances, systematic preference for familiar preparation methods, and difficulty managing complex meal timing created additional evidence of elderly domestic management challenges and capability reduction that convinced Patricia I needed increasing supervision and assistance. The personal care routine that Patricia occasionally observed included basic grooming standards, simple styling choices, and the kind of appearance management that suggested either declining attention to personal presentation or reduced capability for sophisticated self-care coordination. My systematic preference for wash-and-wear hairstyles, minimal makeup application, and basic clothing coordination created evidence of elderly personal management simplification that reinforced assumptions about capability decline and independence challenges. The communication patterns that characterized my interactions with family members included systematic deference to their opinions, apparent confusion about complex topics, and the kind of conversational limitations that convinced Patricia she was dealing with cognitive decline rather than strategic information management and family relationship assessment. My preference for simple discussions, systematic requests for repeated explanations, and apparent difficulty following complex family planning conversations provided comprehensive evidence of elderly cognitive challenges and decision-making dependency. The household contribution coordination that I attempted to maintain included basic cleaning assistance, simple meal preparation help, and the kind of domestic participation that demonstrated both willingness to contribute and significant capability limitations. My systematic attention to tasks within my apparent physical abilities, combined with obvious struggles with more complex household management, created perfect evidence of elderly domestic limitation, while my expressions of gratitude for permission to help reinforce the dependency narrative that Patricia found psychologically satisfying. The social interaction patterns that characterized my behavior during family gatherings and community events included apparent difficulty following complex conversations, systematic confusion about current events, and the kind of elderly social navigation challenges that suggested both cognitive processing limitations and reduced social competence. My preference for simple social activities, systematic avoidance of complex group dynamics, and apparent anxiety about social expectations created additional evidence of elderly social limitation and dependency needs that convinced Patricia her control and oversight were necessary for successful family and community integration. This comprehensive evidence package that I had systematically created and maintained throughout my residency in their home provided Patricia with everything she needed to justify her increasingly aggressive control and systematic elimination of my comfort, dignity, and independence. Every detail reinforced the narrative she wanted to believe that she was dealing with a declining elderly woman who needed management and oversight rather than respect and consideration. The incident that would ultimately cost Patricia everything she thought she controlled occurred on a gray Tuesday morning in November 2024. When she informed me over her organic fair trade coffee that effective immediately, I would no longer be permitted in the living room, dining room, or kitchen during family time, which apparently included all evening hours, weekend mornings, and any time she was entertaining friends or conducting her home-based yoga instruction business. That had been steadily growing throughout the year. Eleanor, she said with the kind of condescending smile usually reserved for misbehaving toddlers, I think it's time we established some clearer boundaries about shared spaces. This is primarily Michael's and my home, and we need areas where we can relax without feeling like we're constantly hosting a house guest. I'm sure you understand. The systematic exclusion from common areas that Patricia presented as reasonable household organization was actually the culmination of months of increasing restrictions, financial pressure, and emotional manipulation designed to make my living situation so uncomfortable that I would voluntarily move to an appropriate senior facility where people my age could receive proper care and social interaction with their peers while freeing up their spare bedroom for Patricia's planned expansion of her yoga business into a dedicated studio space. What Patricia never suspected was that the helpless elderly woman she was banishing to a back bedroom had spent 48 years building one of the most powerful real estate empires on the West Coast, maintaining complete anonymity through carefully structured corporate entities and professional networks while accumulating sufficient wealth and property control to reshape entire neighborhoods, influence municipal development policies, and demonstrate to entitled family members that respect for elders isn't just a moral obligation, it's a practical necessity when you never know who actually controls the ground you're standing on. The masterpiece of deception that I had carefully constructed over the 18 months since Frank's death required meticulous attention to every detail of elderly vulnerability. From the way I shuffled slightly when walking to demonstrate age-related mobility concerns, to the systematic confusion I displayed about modern technology that convinced Patricia she was dealing with a woman whose cognitive capabilities had diminished significantly with age, and whose independence was rapidly becoming a safety concern that required family intervention and protective oversight. The physical appearance that I maintained throughout my residency at Oak Grove Drive represented a carefully calculated performance of elderly decline and financial constraint that began each morning with a selection of clothing that told exactly the story Patricia needed to believe. My rotation of 6 polyester blouses in faded pastels purchased specifically from the clearance rack at JCPenney to show appropriate wear patterns and budget consk used spared with elastic waist slacks in neutral colors that suggested both comfort priorities and limited fashion awareness. The same brown cardigan that I wore almost daily, with its slightly pilled fabric and carefully maintained but obviously aging appearance, created the perfect image of an elderly woman who made clothing choices based on practicality and budget limitations rather than style considerations or social presentation concerns. The walking pattern that I had developed through careful observation of actual elderly mobility challenges included a slight shuffle that suggested balance concerns without appearing dramatic. Occasional pauses to steady myself against furniture that demonstrated realistic age-related stability issues. And the systematic use of handrails and wall support that convinced Patricia I was experiencing the kind of physical decline that made independent living increasingly challenging and potentially dangerous. My careful attention to moving slowly through the house, taking extra time with stairs, and occasionally requesting assistance with tasks that required reaching or lifting created comprehensive evidence of physical limitation while maintaining complete credibility about age-related capability reduction. The medication management routine that Patricia observed daily provided systematic evidence of both health challenges and cognitive processing limitations that convinced her she was dealing with a woman whose medical complexity was increasing, while her ability to manage healthcare coordination was declining significantly. The weekly pill organizer that I filled each Sunday with generic medications for blood pressure, cholesterol, and arthritis management sat prominently on my bedroom dresser alongside Medicare paperwork, pharmacy receipts, and the kind of healthcare expense documentation that demonstrated careful attention to medical costs while suggesting significant health maintenance requirements and medical system dependency. The apparent confusion about prescription coordination that I displayed whenever Patricia offered assistance included systematic questions about medication timing, apparent difficulty understanding dosing instructions, and the kind of healthcare navigation challenges that convinced her my medical management was becoming too complex for independent coordination. My systematic requests for clarification about drug interactions, apparent anxiety about side effects, and preference for family involvement in medical consultations created compelling evidence of health HKR dependency while reinforcing assumptions about cognitive processing limitations and decision-making challenges. The financial management approach that I demonstrated throughout my daily routines included careful attention to coupon organization, systematic comparison shopping that suggested budget constraints, and the kind of expense anxiety that convinced Patricia she was dealing with a woman whose financial resources were severely limited and whose money management was becoming increasingly challenging. The envelope system that I used for organizing monthly expenses, combined with my handwritten budget notebook and systematic tracking of small purchases, created perfect evidence of fixed income limitations while demonstrating the kind of careful financial coordination that elderly individuals employ when every dollar must be carefully managed and accounted for. The grocery shopping behavior that Patricia observed during our joint errands provided comprehensive documentation of budget consciousness and dietary simplification that suggested both financial constraints and reduced cooking capability. My systematic use of store loyalty cards, careful attention to sale prices and weekly specials, and preference for generic brands over name brand products demonstrated exactly the kind of financial management that convinced her I was operating on severely restricted resources while maintaining basic nutritional needs through careful shopping coordination and expense management that excluded consideration of premium food products or sophisticated dietary preferences. The technology limitations that I displayed whenever Patricia attempted to help me with modern devices included apparent confusion about smartphone operations, systematic difficulty with remote control functions, and the kind of digital literacy challenges that convinced her my cognitive processing had declined significantly while my learning capability had been reduced to the point where technology assistance was becoming a family responsibility rather than individual capability. My systematic requests for repeated explanations, apparent anxiety about internet security, and preference for traditional communication methods over digital coordination created compelling evidence of generational technology gaps while reinforcing assumptions about cognitive limitation and dependency needs. The social withdrawal patterns that characterized my daily lifestyle included limited contact with outside friends, systematic avoidance of community activities, and the kind of social isolation that convinced Patricia she was dealing with a woman whose emotional and social needs had been reduced to basic family interaction while her capability for independent social coordination had declined significantly. My apparent lack of phone calls from friends, absence of social calendar coordination, and systematic dependence on family members for social stimulation created perfect evidence of elderly social limitation while suggesting that my emotional and intellectual needs could be met through minimal family interaction and basic household routine management. The memory inconsistencies that I occasionally displayed during family conversations included apparent confusion about recent events, systematic difficulty recalling specific dates and details, and the kind of cognitive processing challenges that convinced Patricia she was witnessing early-stage dementia rather than strategic information management designed to test family patience while documenting responses to elderly vulnerability and cognitive limitation presentation. My systematic questions about previous conversations, apparent confusion about scheduling coordination, and requests for repeated explanations about family plans created compelling evidence of memory processing challenges while building documentation of family attitudes toward elderly cognitive decline. The household navigation difficulties that I demonstrated included apparent confusion about storage locations, systematic requests for assistance finding basic items, and the kind of spatial processing challenges that suggested cognitive decline rather than strategic performance designed to reinforce assumptions about elderly capability limitation and independence challenges. My apparent difficulty remembering where kitchen utensils were stored, systematic confusion about household organization systems, and requests for guidance about basic household coordination created additional evidence of cognitive processing limitations while reinforcing Patricia's assumptions about my need for supervision and assistance. The decision-making hesitation that characterized my approach to even simple choices included systematic requests for family input about basic preferences, apparent anxiety about making incorrect decisions, and the kind of cognitive processing uncertainty that convinced Patricia she was dealing with a woman whose decision-making capability had been significantly compromised by age and cognitive decline. My systematic deferral to family preferences, apparent confusion about option evaluation, and requests for guidance about basic daily choices created comprehensive evidence of cognitive limitation while positioning family members as necessary decision-making support systems. The physical coordination challenges that I occasionally displayed included apparent difficulty with fine motor tasks, systematic challenges with complex movements, and the kind of physical processing limitations that suggested age-related decline, rather than strategic performance designed to reinforce assumptions about elderly capability reduction and independence challenges. My apparent difficulty opening jars, systematic challenges with button fastening, and occasional coordination problems with eating utensils created additional evidence of physical limitation while forcing assumptions about my need for assistance and supervision. The sleep pattern disruptions that Patricia observed included early bedtime coordination, systematic complaints about sleep quality, and the kind of rest management challenges that suggested age-related health issues rather than strategic lifestyle coordination designed to minimize social interaction while maintaining household routine that didn't interfere with family activities or social coordination. My systematic preference for quiet evening activities, apparent fatigue during social interaction, and early morning wake-up patterns created evidence of elderly sleep management challenges while reinforcing assumptions about energy limitation and social capacity reduction. The dietary simplification approach that characterized my meal preferences included systematic selection of basic foods, apparent difficulty with complex cooking coordination, and the kind of nutritional management that suggested both budget limitations and reduced culinary capability rather than strategic food choice coordination designed to maintain simple meal patterns while avoiding kitchen coordination conflicts or cooking schedule complications. My preference for simple prepared foods, systematic avoidance of complex meal preparation, And apparent confusion about modern kitchen appliances created comprehensive evidence of culinary limitation. How reinforcing assumptions about domestic capability decline. The communication style that I employed during family interactions included systematic use of simple language, apparent difficulty following complex conversations, and the kind of conversational processing that convinced Patricia she was dealing with cognitive decline rather than strategic communication management designed to assess family attitudes while avoiding complex topic coordination that might reveal sophisticated knowledge or professional expertise. My preference for basic discussion topics, systematic requests for conversation simplification, and apparent confusion about current events created additional evidence of cognitive processing limitation. While positioning family members as necessary communication facilitators. The entertainment preferences that characterized my daily routine included simple television programming, basic reading materials, and the kind of intellectual stimulation that suggested cognitive capacity reduction rather than strategic entertainment. Choice coordination designed to maintain age-appropriate interests while avoiding complex media coordination that might reveal sophisticated knowledge or professional background. My systematic selection of basic television shows, preference for simple reading materials, and apparent difficulty following complex plot developments created evidence of intellectual limitation while reinforcing assumptions about cognitive processing decline and entertainment capability reduction. The personal care routine that I maintained included basic grooming standards, simple styling choices, and the kind of appearance management that suggested either declining attention to personal presentation or reduced capability for sophisticated self-care coordination rather than strategic appearance management designed to reinforce assumptions about elderly simplicity while maintaining appropriate hygiene and basic presentation standards. My systematic preference for wash-and-wear hairstyles, minimal makeup application, and basic clothing coordination created evidence of personal care simplification while reinforcing assumptions about elderly appearance management limitations. The emotional regulation patterns that I displayed during family interactions included apparent sensitivity to criticism, systematic anxiety about family approval, and the kind of emotional processing that convinced Patricia she was dealing with elderly emotional vulnerability rather than strategic emotional management designed to assess family empathy while documenting responses to elderly emotional needs and family relationship dynamics. My systematic expressions of gratitude for basic kindness, apparent anxiety about family harmony, and preference for conflict avoidance created evidence of emotional dependency while reinforcing assumptions about elderly emotional fragility and family relationship dependency. The routine maintenance that characterized my daily schedule included systematic attention to simple tasks, apparent difficulty with complex coordination, and the kind of activity management that convinced Patricia she was dealing with a woman whose capability had been reduced to basic life maintenance while her need for assistance and oversight had increased significantly with age. My systematic preference for familiar routines, apparent anxiety about schedule changes, and requests for assistance with complex coordination created comprehensive evidence of elderly routine dependence. While reinforcing assumptions about my need for family management and oversight. The expense tracking coordination that I maintain through careful attention to receipt organization, systematic documentation of small purchases, and the kind of financial record keeping that convinced Patricia she was dealing with fixed income limitations and careful budget management rather than strategic expense documentation designed to reinforce assumptions about financial constraint, while maintaining comprehensive financial coordination and expense management. My systematic attention to coupon coordination, careful comparison shopping, and apparent anxiety about unexpected expenses created additional evidence of elderly financial limitation while positioning family members as necessary financial oversight providers. This comprehensive performance of elderly vulnerability and cognitive limitation created exactly the foundation that Patricia needed to justify her systematic control and elimination of my comfort while positioning herself as the primary authority figure responsible for managing an increasingly dependent elderly family member whose capability limitations required constant supervision and decision-making assistance rather than recognizing the sophisticated strategic intelligence that was carefully documenting every aspect of family dynamics for future consequence, implementation, and justice delivery coordination. The daily evidence accumulation that supported my vulnerable elderly persona required systematic coordination across multiple aspects of household living. From the carefully staged financial limitations that Patricia observed during our shared grocery shopping trips, to the deliberately displayed technology confusion that convinced her she was dealing with a woman whose cognitive processing had declined to the point where basic modern living required constant family assistance and protective oversight rather than recognizing the sophisticated strategic planning that was documenting every aspect of family dynamics for comprehensive consequence coordination. The financial documentation that I left visible throughout the house provided Patricia with systematic evidence of budget constraints and careful expense management that convinced her she was dealing with a woman whose resources were severely limited while her financial planning capability had declined significantly with age. The handwritten ledger that I maintained for tracking monthly expenses sat prominently on my bedroom dresser alongside Medicare paperwork, prescription receipts, and the kind of careful expense documentation that elderly individuals employ when every dollar must be managed and accounted for through systematic budget coordination and careful expense tracking. The coupon organization system that characterized my approach to grocery expense management included systematic collection of store advertisements, careful attention to sale coordination, and the kind of discount shopping preparation that convinced Patricia I was operating on fixed income limitations while managing household expenses through careful planning and systematic attention to cost reduction opportunities. The envelope system that I used for organizing grocery money, combined with my systematic comparison of store prices and careful coordination of shopping lists, created perfect evidence of financial constraint while demonstrating the kind of careful money management that elderly individuals employ when maintaining independence requires strategic expense coordination. The prescription management evidence that Patricia observed during her systematic monitoring of my daily routines included generic medication coordination, systematic attention to pharmacy discount programs, and the kind of healthcare expense management that suggested both financial limitations and cognitive processing challenges with complex medical system navigation. The Medicare paperwork that I carefully filed in manila folders, combined with my systematic comparison shopping for prescription costs and apparent confusion about insurance coverage details, created comprehensive evidence of healthcare coordination challenges while reinforcing assumptions about cognitive limitation and medical management dependency. The transportation coordination that demonstrated my apparent mobility limitations included careful attention to bus schedule management, systematic avoidance of complex driving situations, and the kind of mobility restriction that convinced Patricia she was dealing with a woman whose independence was declining while her transportation needs were becoming increasingly dependent on family assistance and coordination. My 2009 Honda Civic with its basic features and careful maintenance documentation provided perfect evidence of practical vehicle choices while my apparent anxiety about highway driving and systematic requests for transportation assistance created additional evidence of elderly independence challenges. The household maintenance documentation that I requested Michael's assistance with included systematic attention to minor repairs, basic property upkeep coordination, and the kind of physical task management that demonstrated age-related limitation, while building comprehensive evidence of practical dependency and capability reduction. The maintenance notebook that I kept for tracking household repair needs combined with my systematic expressions of gratitude for family assistance and apparent difficulty coordinating complex property. Why management created compelling evidence of elderly independence challenges while reinforcing assumptions about my need for family oversight and assistance. The meal planning evidence that characterized my approach to household nutrition management included systematic attention to simple recipe coordination, basic cooking technique preference, and the kind of culinary simplification that suggested both capability decline and equipment familiarity challenges rather than strategic meal coordination designed to avoid kitchen schedule conflicts while maintaining nutritional adequacy. Through careful food choice management, the recipe collection that I maintained for simple meal preparation, combined with my apparent confusion about modern kitchen appliances and systematic preference for familiar cooking methods, created additional evidence of domestic capability limitation. The social calendar evidence that Patricia observed during her monitoring of my daily activities included systematic absence of external social coordination, limited community involvement participation, and the kind of social isolation that convinced her she was dealing with a woman whose emotional and intellectual needs had been reduced to basic family interaction while her capability for independent social development had declined significantly with age. The absence of phone calls from friends, systematic avoidance of community activities, and apparent dependence on family members for social stimulation created perfect evidence of elderly social limita, shown while suggesting that my emotional needs could be met through minimal family interaction. The technology usage documentation that I displayed throughout the house included systematic evidence of digital literacy challenges, apparent confusion about modern device operation, and the kind of technological limitation that convinced Patricia my cognitive processing had declined to the point where basic technology assistance was becoming a family responsibility rather than individual capability. The basic cell phone that I carried with apparent difficulty operating, combined with my systematic requests for assistance with television remote control and apparent anxiety about internet security, created comprehensive evidence of technology dependency while reinforcing assumptions about cognitive processing limitations. The medical appointment coordination that required family transportation assistance included systematic documentation of healthcare navigation challenges, apparent difficulty understanding insurance procedures, and the kind of medical system complexity that convinced Patricia my healthcare management was becoming too complex for independent coordination while requiring family oversight and decision-making assistance. The appointment scheduling notebook that I maintained with systematic attention to medical coordination, combined with my apparent confusion about specialist referrals and preference for family accompaniment, and during medical consultations, created compelling evidence of healthcare dependency. The clothing maintenance evidence that characterized my approach to wardrobe management included systematic attention to garment care, basic alteration coordination, and the kind of appearance management that suggested both budget limitations and capability simplification rather than strategic wardrobe coordination designed to reinforce assumptions about elderly lifestyle limitation while maintaining appropriate presentation standards. The sewing supplies that I kept for basic clothing repair, combined with my systematic preference for comfortable over stylish clothing choices and apparent difficulty coordinating complex wardrobe management, created additional evidence of elderly capability limitation. The entertainment choice documentation that Patricia observed during her monitoring of my daily activities included systematic preference for simple television programming, basic reading material selection, and the kind of intellectual stimulation that suggested cognitive capacity reduction rather than strategic entertainment coordination designed to maintain age-appropriate interests while avoiding complex media consumption that might reveal sophisticated knowledge or professional background. The library books that I checked out with systematic attention to simple content, combined with my apparent difficulty following complex plot developments and preference for basic entertainment options, created evidence of cognitive processing decline. The home security evidence that I displayed through systematic attention to basic safety measures included apparent anxiety about neighborhood security concerns, systematic confusion about modern alarm system operation and the kind of protection, coordination that convinced Patricia my safety management was becoming too complex for independent coordination while requiring family oversight and assistance. The basic door locks that I checked repeatedly, combined with my apparent confusion about home security technology and systematic expressions of concern about personal safety, created compelling evidence of elderly security dependency while reinforcing assumptions about cognitive processing limitations. The bill payment coordination that I occasionally requested Patricia's assistance with included systematic attention to monthly expense management, apparent confusion about automatic payment systems, and the kind of financial coordination that convinced her my money management was becoming too complex for independent coordination while requiring family oversight and assistance. The checkbook register that I maintained with careful attention to expense tracking, combined with my apparent difficulty understanding online banking procedures and systematic preference for tradition. All payment methods created additional evidence of financial management limitations. The insurance coordination evidence that characterized my approach to coverage management included systematic attention to policy documentation, apparent confusion about coverage details, and the kind of insurance navigation that suggested both cognitive processing challenges and financial management limitations rather than strategic insurance coordination designed to maintain appropriate coverage while avoiding complex policy management that might reveal sophisticated financial knowledge. The insurance paperwork that I carefully filed in manila folders, combined with my systematic questions about coverage coordination and apparent anxiety about premium costs, created comprehensive evidence of insurance management dependency. Emergency preparedness documentation that I maintained included systematic attention to basic safety planning, apparent confusion about emergency procedures, and the kind of crisis preparation that convinced Patricia my emergency management was becoming too complex for independent coordination while requiring family oversight and protective assistance. The emergency contact list that I kept prominently displayed, combined with my systematic expressions of concern about crisis coordination and apparent difficulty understanding emergency communication systems, created compelling evidence of elderly emergency management limitations while reinforcing assumptions about my need for family protection and oversight. The garden maintenance evidence that characterized my approach to outdoor property care included systematic attention to basic plant care, apparent difficulty with complex landscaping coordination, and the kind of property management that suggested both physical limitations and capability reduction rather than strategic garden coordination designed to maintain basic property appearance while avoiding complex outdoor maintenance that might require professional assistance. The simple garden tools that I maintained for basic plant care, combined with my systematic expressions of concern about property maintenance costs and apparent difficulty coordinating complex landscape projects, created additional evidence of elderly property management limitations. The banking coordination evidence that Patricia observed during our joint errands included systematic attention to in-person transaction preference, apparent confusion about automated banking systems, and the kind of financial institution navigation that suggested both cognitive processing challenges and technology limitation rather than strategic banking coordination designed to maintain simple financial management while avoiding complex electronic coordination that might reveal sophisticated financial knowledge or professional banking relationships. The bank visits that I scheduled for simple transactions, combined with my apparent anxiety about electronic banking security and systematic preference for traditional banking methods, created compelling evidence of elderly financial management limitations. The shopping coordination evidence that characterized my approach to retail navigation included systematic attention to familiar store locations, apparent confusion about new retail layouts, and the kind of commercial navigation that suggested both cognitive processing challenges and spatial limitation rather than strategic shopping coordination designed to maintain simple retail interaction while avoiding complex commercial environments that might require sophisticated navigation or consumer knowledge. The shopping list preparation that I maintained with careful attention to basic needs, combined with my apparent difficulty navigating large retail environments and systematic preference for familiar hopping locations, created additional evidence of elderly retail navigation limitations. The communication documentation that I maintained through systematic attention to traditional correspondence methods included handwritten letters, basic telephone coordination, and the kind of communication management that suggested both technology limitation and cognitive processing challenges rather than strategic communication coordination designed to maintain simple interaction patterns while avoiding complex electronic communication that might reveal sophisticated professional networks or business relationships. The address book that I maintained with careful attention to family contact information, combined with my apparent confusion about electronic communication methods and systematic preference for traditional correspondence, created comprehensive evidence of elderly communication limitations. The utility management evidence that characterized my approach to household service coordination included systematic attention to basic service needs, apparent confusion about modern utility systems, and the kind of service management that suggested both cognitive processing challenges and technology limitation rather than strategic utility coordination designed to maintain simple household service while avoiding complex utility management that might reveal sophisticated property management knowledge or business utility experience. The utility bill organization that I maintained with careful attention to payment schedules, combined with my apparent confusion about automated utility systems and systematic expressions of concern about utility costs, created compelling evidence of elderly utility management limitations. The healthcare documentation that I maintained through systematic attention to medical record organization included basic health information tracking, simple medication coordination, and the kind of healthcare management that suggested both cognitive processing challenges and medical system navigation limitations rather than strategic healthcare coordination designed to maintain appropriate medical care while avoiding complex healthcare navigation that might reveal sophisticated medical knowledge or professional healthcare relationships. The medical file organization that I maintained with careful attention to appointment scheduling, combined with my apparent confusion about healthcare insurance procedures and systematic preference for family involvement in medical coordination, created additional evidence of elderly healthcare management dependency. The tax preparation evidence that I displayed through systematic attention to basic tax documentation included simple income reporting, basic deduction coordination, and the kind of tax management that suggested both cognitive processing challenges and financial complexity limitation rather than strategic tax coordination designed to maintain appropriate tax compliance while avoiding complex tax preparation that might reveal sophisticated financial knowledge or professional tax management relationships. The tax document organization that I maintained with careful attention to basic income documentation, combined with my apparent confusion about tax preparation procedures and systematic expressions of concern about tax compliance costs, created comprehensive evidence of elderly tax management limitations. The legal document evidence that characterized my approach to legal coordination included systematic attention to basic legal documentation, apparent confusion about legal procedures, and the kind of legal management that suggested both cognitive processing challenges and legal system navigation limitations rather than strategic legal coordination designed to maintain appropriate legal compliance while avoiding complex legal management that might reveal sophisticated legal knowledge or professional legal relationships. The legal document organization that I maintained with careful attention to basic legal paperwork, combined with my apparent confusion about legal procedures and systematic expressions of concern about legal costs, created compelling evidence of elderly legal management limitations. The investment coordination evidence that I displayed through systematic attention to basic financial planning included simple retirement account management, basic investment coordination, and the kind of financial planning that suggested both cognitive processing challenges and investment complexity limitation rather than strategic investment coordination designed to maintain appropriate financial planning, while avoiding complex investment management that might reveal sophisticated financial knowledge or professional investment relationships. The investment document organization that I maintained with careful attention to basic retirement planning, combined with my apparent confusion about investment procedures and systematic expressions of concern about financial market volatility, created additional evidence of elderly investment management limitations. The property management evidence that characterized my approach to real estate coordination included systematic attention to basic property maintenance, apparent confusion about property management procedures, and the kind of real estate management that suggested both cognitive processing challenges and property complexity limitation rather than strategic property coordination designed to maintain appropriate property care, while avoiding complex property management that might reveal sophisticated real estate knowledge or professional property management relationships. The property document organization that I maintained with careful attention to basic property paperwork, combined with my apparent confusion about property management procedures and systematic expressions of concern about property maintenance costs, created comprehensive evidence of elderly property management limitations. This comprehensive collection of daily evidence that I had systematically created and maintained throughout my residency in their home provided Patricia with everything she needed to justify her increasingly aggressive control while building her confidence that she was dealing with a declining elderly woman whose capability limitations required constant supervision rather than recognizing the sophisticated documentation project that was carefully recording every aspect of family dynamics for future consequence implementation, and justice delivery coordination that would demonstrate the reality of respect requirements and family loyalty obligations. The systematic nature of this evidence accumulation ensured that Patricia never questioned the authenticity of my vulnerable presentation, because every aspect of my daily life reinforced the narrative she wanted to believe while providing multiple confirmation points for her assumptions about elderly limitation and dependency. The careful coordination of all these evidence streams created an unshakable foundation for her belief in my decline, all building her confidence in her authority and control over my living situation. The documentation patterns that I established through this comprehensive evidence collection also serve the strategic purpose of creating detailed records of Patricia's responses to elderly vulnerability, her attitudes toward family responsibility, and her systematic exploitation of perceived weakness for personal advantage. Every interaction that seemed to confirm my limitations was actually building a comprehensive case file about her character and intentions that would prove invaluable when the time came for consequence delivery and justice implementation. The beauty of this evidence system was its self-reinforcing nature. The more Patricia believed in my limitations, the more controlling and dismissive she became, which in turn provided even more documentation of her true character while building an increasingly strong foundation for the eventual revelation and consequence coordination that would transform her comfortable assumptions about elderly manipulation into the most expensive education about respect and family loyalty that any entitled daughter-in-law had ever received. The transformation of Patricia Lynn Morrison from the sweet, attentive young woman who had charmed my son Michael during their college years into the calculating, entitled manipulator who would ultimately attempt to systematically erase my dignity and independence had been so gradual and expertly orchestrated that even I, with decades of experience reading human character and motivation, found myself occasionally impressed by the sophisticated nature of her psychological manipulation and strategic family positioning that revealed a level of cunning and long-term planning that most people never develop or deploy in their personal relationships. Patricia's background as the youngest daughter in a middle-class family from suburban Portland had provided her with exactly the kind of financial insecurity and social positioning anxiety that created the perfect foundation for her systematic approach to marriage as economic advancement rather than emotional partnership. Her parents, Robert and Linda Morrison, had both worked multiple jobs throughout her childhood, her father managing a small accounting firm while driving for a rideshare company on weekends, her mother working as a dental hygienist while cleaning houses for wealthy families in the evenings, creating a household atmosphere that emphasized financial struggle as the primary source of stress and family tension, while positioning wealth acquisition as the ultimate solution to life's challenges and relationship problems. The financial pressure that had characterized Patricia's upbringing included systematic attention to expense management, careful coordination of employment opportunities, and the kind of economic anxiety that convinced her from an early age that financial security was the foundation of happiness and dignity, while financial limitation was the source of shame and social inadequacy. Her childhood memories were dominated by conversations about bills, debt, and the systematic comparison of her family's economic status with their more prosperous neighbors, creating a worldview that measured personal worth through material accumulation and social positioning rather than character development, authentic relationships, or community contribution. The social comparison patterns that shaped Patricia's adolescent development included systematic attention to wealth indicators among her peers, careful observation of lifestyle differences between economic classes, and the kind of status consciousness that convinced her that marriage to a financially successful partner was the most practical path to economic security and social advancement. Her high school years were characterized by strategic relationship choices that prioritized economic potential over emotional compatibility, systematic cultivation of connections with affluent families, and careful positioning within social networks that provided access to wealth and status rather than authentic friendship or personal development. The college experience that brought Patricia into contact with Michael had been carefully planned as an investment in social advancement rather than intellectual development or career preparation. Her selection of a business administration program at a prestigious private university was motivated primarily by the networking opportunities and potential marriage prospects rather than genuine interest in business principles or professional development. The substantial student loans that she accumulated during her undergraduate years were viewed as acceptable debt because they provided access to affluent social circles and potential wealthy marriage partners who could solve her financial problems, while providing the lifestyle and security that she considered essential for happiness and dignity. The courtship strategy that Patricia employed during her relationship with Michael demonstrated sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation and long-term relationship management that prioritized strategic positioning over authentic, emotional connection. Her systematic attention to presenting herself as supportive, nurturing, and family-oriented masked carefully calculated planning for economic advancement and social positioning. Had viewed marriage as a business partnership rather than emotional union. The sweetness and consideration that initially charmed both Michael and our family represented strategic performance designed to secure marriage commitment, while concealing fundamental character traits and motivations that would emerge only after. Legal and social commitment made relationship escape more difficult and costly. The family integration approach that characterized Patricia's early relationship with our family included systematic cultivation of positive relationships with both William and me, careful attention to presenting herself as the perfect daughter-in-law candidate, and strategic demonstration of values and priorities that aligned with family expectations while concealing personal motivations and long-term intentions that differed significantly from her presented persona. Her apparent interest in family traditions, respect for elderly family members, and commitment to intergenerational relationships represented calculated performance designed to secure family approval and support for marriage rather than genuine appreciation for family values or elderly wisdom. The wedding planning coordination that Patricia managed during her engagement to Michael revealed early indicators of her controlling personality and systematic approach to family manipulation that positioned her preferences as family consensus, while eliminating input from family members who might challenge her authority or decision-making control. Her systematic assumption of planning authority, combined with subtle pressure tactics that made opposition appear unreasonable or unsupportive, demonstrated sophisticated manipulation skills that would later characterize her approach to household management and family relationship control throughout their marriage and my subsequent residency in their home. The early marriage period that followed their wedding provided Patricia with the opportunity to gradually reveal her true character while systematically establishing patterns of control and manipulation that positioned her as the primary authority figure in family decision-making and household management. The sweet, considerate behavior that had characterized her courtship period slowly gave way to increasingly assertive control over domestic arrangements, financial coordination, and family social interactions that marginalized Michael's input, while eliminating external influences that might challenge her authority or question her methods. The career development approach that Patricia pursued following their marriage demonstrated systematic prioritization of lifestyle maintenance over professional achievement or personal fulfillment. Her part-time work in retail coordination provided minimal income while allowing maximum time for household control and family manipulation rather than genuine career development or professional contribution. The yoga instruction business that she eventually developed represented her preferred approach to income generation activities that could be conducted from home while maintaining control over household arrangements and family interactions rather than external employment that might require accountability to supervisors or colleagues who could observe her behavior and personality patterns. The financial management philosophy that guided Patricia's approach to household economics included systematic control over spending decisions, strategic manipulation of budget priorities, and the kind of economic authority that positioned her as the primary decision-maker for family financial coordination while marginalizing Michael's input and eliminating transparency about actual expenses and spending patterns. Her systematic approach to presenting financial information reinforced her authority while creating economic dependency and decision-making subordination that served her control objectives, rather than family financial health or collaborative economic planning. The social control patterns that Patricia established within their marriage included systematic isolation of Michael from external friendships and family relationships that might provide alternative perspectives on household dynamics or family interaction patterns. Her subtle criticism of his friends, strategic scheduling conflicts with family events, and systematic creation of household obligations that prevented external social coordination demonstrated sophisticated understanding of isolation techniques and relationship control that positioned her as his primary social and emotional support system while eliminating influences that might challenge her authority or provide alternative relationship models. The pregnancy and motherhood approach that Patricia employed when their twin daughters were born provided her with additional tools for household control and family manipulation, while positioning her as the essential family member whose authority and decision-making capability were necessary for child welfare and family stability. Her systematic presentation of child care as complex responsibility that required her oversight and coordination aided additional justification for control, while building emotional leverage that made opposition to her authority appear harmful to child welfare and family harmony. The parenting philosophy that guided Patricia's approach to child-rearing included systematic emphasis on material provision over emotional development, competitive advantage over collaborative learning, and the kind of consumer-driven childhood that required substantial financial investment while building entitled expectations and systematic disregard for family cooperation and intergenerational respect. her daughter's expensive activities, designer possessions, and competitive social positioning created monthly expenses that reinforced financial pressure while building family values that prioritized material accumulation over character development or family loyalty. The extended family relationship management that characterized Patricia's approach to in-law relationships demonstrated systematic planning for eventual elder exploitation and asset acquisition that positioned apparent care and concern as strategic investment in future financial opportunities rather than genuine family affection or intergenerational respect. Her initial kindness toward William and me represented calculated relationship development designed to establish trust and dependency that could later be exploited for economic advantage and control, rather than authentic appreciation for family relationships or elderly wisdom. The personality traits that became increasingly apparent as Patricia gained confidence in her household authority included systematic selfishness disguised as family leadership, manipulative behavior presented as practical management, and the kind of entitled attitude that justified exploitation and control as necessary family coordination rather than recognizing the systematic abuse and manipulation that characterized her actual approach to family relationships and household management. Her ability to present controlling behavior as loving concern demonstrated sophisticated psychological manipulation skills that made opposition appear unreasonable, while building justification for increasingly aggressive control and systematic elimination of family members' independence and dignity. The psychological profile that emerged through careful observation of Patricia's behavior patterns revealed a character structure built on insecurity, entitlement, and systematic manipulation rather than authentic confidence, genuine care, or collaborative leadership. Her need for control appeared to stem from deep-seated anxiety about economic security and social positioning that made family relationships primarily valuable as sources of control and resource extraction rather than emotional connection or mutual support. The superficial charm and apparent consideration that characterized her public presentation masked fundamental selfishness and manipulative capability that viewed other people primarily as resources to be managed rather than individuals deserving respect and consideration. The strategic intelligence that Patricia demonstrated in her manipulation techniques suggested systematic study of psychological control methods, rather than natural talent for relationship management or intuitive understanding of family dynamics. Her systematic approach to isolation, dependency creation, and authority establishment followed patterns that appeared learned rather than instinctive, suggesting exposure to manipulation literature or training that provided her with sophisticated tools for family control and systematic exploitation rather than healthy relationship skills or collaborative family management capability. The long-term planning capability that characterized Patricia's approach to family positioning included systematic preparation for elder exploitation and asset acquisition that demonstrated careful consideration of inheritance potential, property value assessment, and the kind of financial planning that viewed elderly family members primarily as economic opportunities rather than individuals deserving respect and care. Her systematic cultivation of dependency relationships, combined with strategic positioning as essential family caregiver, created the perfect foundation for exploitation while maintaining the appearance of family devotion and intergenerational care. The moral framework that guided Patricia's decision-making processes appeared to prioritize personal advantage over family welfare, economic benefit over relationship authenticity, and systematic control over collaborative cooperation in ways that justified exploitation and manipulation as practical family management rather than recognizing the fundamental character defects and ethical failures that characterized her actual approach to family relationships and household authority. Her ability to rationalize controlling and exploitative behavior as necessary family coordination demonstrated systematic moral compromise that enabled increasingly aggressive behavior, while maintaining self-image as devoted family member and responsible household manager. The social presentation skills that Patricia employed in community interactions demonstrated sophisticated ability to maintain public image while concealing private behavior patterns that would damage her reputation and social positioning if revealed to neighbors, friends, or community members who might intervene or provide alternative perspectives on family dynamics and household management. Her systematic management of public appearance, combined with careful control of information sharing about household arrangements, created community perception of successful family leadership while concealing systematic manipulation and exploitation that characterized her actual approach to family relationships. The relationship dynamics that Patricia established with Michael demonstrated systematic emotional manipulation and psychological control that positioned him as subordinate partner, whose primary role was economic provision and social validation rather than equal partnership or collaborative family leadership. Her systematic undermining of his confidence, combined with strategic creation of dependency and isolation, transformed their marriage into a hierarchical relationship that served her control objectives while eliminating his authority and decision-making capability in ways that prepared the foundation for systematic elder exploitation and family resource acquisition. This comprehensive character profile revealed Patricia as a sophisticated manipulator whose apparent devotion to family welfare masked systematic planning for economic exploitation and resource extraction that viewed elderly family members as opportunities for control and financial benefit rather than individuals deserving respect, care, and dignity throughout their aging process and family relationship continuation. The escalation of Patricia's controlling behavior from subtle suggestions to systematic psychological abuse occurred with such calculated precision that I found myself documenting not just the individual incidents of disrespect and manipulation, but the sophisticated methodology she employed to gradually strip away my dignity while maintaining plausible deniability about her intentions and creating conditions that made resistance appear unreasonable or emotionally unstable rather than legitimate self-defense against systematic elder exploitation and family abuse. The initial boundary testing that characterized Patricia's early attempts at establishing control began approximately 6 months after my arrival at Oak Grove Drive, when she started making casual comments about household routines and family coordination that positioned my presence as mild inconvenience rather than welcome family support. Her systematic approach to presenting these observations as helpful suggestions rather than controlling demands demonstrated sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation that made opposition appear oversensitive while building foundation for increasingly aggressive behavior and systematic elimination of my comfort and independence. The kitchen access restrictions that marked the first concrete limitation of my household freedom began with Patricia's casual mention that the morning coffee routine worked better when everyone stayed out of the kitchen during breakfast preparation, because the space was just too small for multiple people to coordinate efficiently. This seemingly reasonable household management suggestion gradually evolved into systematic scheduling that eliminated my access to kitchen facilities during most meal preparation periods, eventually expanding to include cleanup coordination and general kitchen usage that made basic nutrition management increasingly challenging and dependent on Patricia's approval and timing coordination. The bathroom scheduling pressure that followed demonstrated Patricia's systematic approach to creating practical dependency while maintaining the appearance of reasonable household coordination. Her initial suggestions about shower timing to ensure adequate hot water availability gradually evolved into specific scheduling requirements that position my bathing and personal care routines around family priorities, rather than individual needs or preferences. The systematic presentation of these restrictions as practical household management rather than controlling behavior made resistance appear selfish, while building comprehensive coordination dependency that served her authority objectives rather than genuine household efficiency or family harmony. The laundry access limitations that characterized Patricia's systematic approach to domestic control included specific timing requirements for washing machine and dryer usage, systematic restrictions on detergent and fabric softener access, and the kind of household resource management that positioned basic personal care coordination as privilege requiring approval rather than fundamental independence right deserving respect and accommodation. The presentation of these restrictions as resource conservation and equipment protection rather than controlling behavior created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent household coordination while building practical dependency that reinforced her authority and control. The living room usage restrictions that preceded the complete banishment began with subtle suggestions about television programming preferences, systematic discouragement of my reading activities during family time, and the kind of common area management that positioned my presence as intrusion rather than legitimate household participation deserving respect and accommodation. Patricia's systematic approach to presenting these restrictions as family consideration rather than elder exclusion made resistance appear antisocial, while building foundation for increasingly aggressive space control and systematic elimination of my comfort and dignity within shared household areas. The meal coordination restrictions that demonstrated Patricia's systematic approach to nutritional control included limitations on refrigerator access, systematic restrictions on food storage and preparation areas, and the kind of dietary management that positioned basic nutrition coordination as household privilege requiring approval rather than fundamental independence right deserving respect and accommodation. Her systematic presentation of these restrictions as kitchen organization and food safety rather than controlling behavior created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent nutrition management while building practical dependency that served her control objectives rather than genuine household efficiency or family welfare. The telephone usage restrictions that characterized Patricia's approach to communication control included systematic monitoring of phone calls, strategic interruption of conversations, and the kind of communication management that positioned basic social coordination as household disruption rather than legitimate independence right deserving respect and protection. Her systematic presentation of these restrictions as household courtesy and noise management rather than social isolation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent social coordination while building communication dependency that reinforced her authority and control over external relationships and social support systems. The mail handling restrictions that demonstrated Patricia's systematic approach to information control included unauthorized review of correspondence, strategic delays in mail delivery, and the kind of communication management that positioned basic information access as household coordination issue rather than fundamental privacy right deserving respect and protection. Her systematic presentation of these restrictions as mail organization and household efficiency rather than privacy violation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent information management while building comprehensive communication control that served her authority objectives rather than genuine household coordination or family welfare. The medication management interference that characterized Patricia's approach to healthcare control included systematic questioning of prescription coordination, unauthorized involvement in medical appointment scheduling, and the kind of health management that positioned basic medical independence as family coordination issue rather than fundamental healthcare right deserving respect and protection. Her systematic presentation of this interference as family concern and healthcare assistance rather than medical manipulation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent healthcare coordination while building medical dependency that reinforced her authority and control over health-related decisions and medical system interaction. The financial coordination pressure that revealed Patricia's systematic approach to economic control included persistent questioning about expense management, strategic suggestions about spending priorities, and the kind of financial oversight that positioned basic economic independence as household coordination issue rather than fundamental financial right deserving respect and protection. Her systematic presentation of this pressure as family financial planning and expense coordination rather than economic manipulation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent financial management while building economic dependency that served her control objectives rather than genuine household financial welfare or family economic health. The transportation control tactics that demonstrated Patricia's systematic approach to mobility restriction included strategic unavailability for assistance, systematic discouragement of independent driving, and the kind of mobility management that positioned basic transportation independence as family coordination issue rather than fundamental freedom of movement deserving respect and accommodation. Her systematic presentation of these tactics as transportation safety and family scheduling rather than mobility restriction created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent transportation while building comprehensive movement dependency that reinforced her authority and control over social interaction and community participation. The guest visit restrictions that characterized Patricia's approach to social control included systematic discouragement of visitor invitations, strategic unavailability during potential social coordination, and the kind of hospitality management that positioned basic social interaction as household disruption rather than legitimate relationship maintenance deserving respect and accommodation. Her systematic presentation of these restrictions as household management and family privacy rather than social isolation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent social coordination while building comprehensive relationship control that served her authority objectives rather than genuine household harmony or family welfare. The medical appointment interference that revealed Patricia's systematic approach to healthcare manipulation included unauthorized communication with medical providers, strategic scheduling coordination without consultation, and the kind of healthcare management that positioned basic medical independence as family coordination responsibility rather than fundamental healthcare autonomy deserving respect and protection. Her systematic presentation of this interference as family healthcare coordination and medical assistance rather than healthcare manipulation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent medical management while building healthcare dependency that reinforced her control over medical decisions and healthcare system interaction. The personal property restrictions that demonstrated Patricia's systematic approach to possession control included unauthorized organization of personal belongings, strategic suggestions about storage coordination, and the kind of property management that positioned basic possession control as household organization issue rather than fundamental property right deserving respect and protection. Her systematic presentation of these restrictions as household organization and space efficiency rather than property violation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent possession management while building comprehensive control over personal belongings and living space coordination. The sleep schedule interference that characterized Patricia's systematic approach to rest control included strategic noise coordination during sleep periods, systematic disruption of evening routines, and the kind of sleep management that positioned basic rest independence as household coordination issue rather than fundamental health requirement deserving respect and accommodation. Her systematic presentation of this interference as household scheduling and family activity coordination rather than sleep disruption created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent rest management while building comprehensive control over daily routine and personal health coordination. The holiday participation restrictions that revealed Patricia's systematic approach to family tradition control included strategic exclusion from planning coordination, systematic relegation to observer rather than participant status, and the kind of celebration management that positioned basic family participation as privilege requiring approval rather than fundamental family membership right deserving respect and inclusion. Her systematic presentation of these restrictions as celebration efficiency and family coordination rather than elder exclusion created additional justification for systematic elimination of family tradition participation while building comprehensive control over family cultural activities and intergenerational relationship coordination. The gift-giving interference that demonstrated Patricia's systematic approach to family relationship control included strategic coordination of present selection, systematic oversight of gift exchange coordination, and the kind of relationship management that positioned basic family generosity as household coordination issue rather than fundamental relationship expression deserving respect and autonomy. Her systematic presentation of this interference as family coordination and gift management rather than relationship manipulation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent family relationship expression while building comprehensive control over intergenerational bonding and family affection demonstration. The emergency preparedness manipulation that characterized Patricia's systematic approach to safety control included strategic oversight of emergency planning, systematic involvement in safety coordination without consultation, and the kind of crisis management that positioned basic safety independence as family coordination responsibility rather than fundamental security autonomy deserving respect and accommodation. Her systematic presentation of this manipulation as family safety planning and emergency coordination rather than security control created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent safety management while building comprehensive control over crisis preparation and emergency response coordination. The community participation restrictions that revealed Patricia's systematic approach to social isolation included strategic discouragement of community involvement, systematic obstacles to external activity participation, and the kind of social management that positioned basic community engagement as household coordination issue rather than fundamental social participation right deserving respect and accommodation. Her systematic presentation of these restrictions as household scheduling and family priority coordination rather than social isolation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent community participation while building comprehensive control over external relationship development and social support system maintenance. The healthcare decision-making interference that demonstrated Patricia's systematic approach to medical autonomy violation included unauthorized involvement in treatment discussions, strategic coordination of medical decisions without consultation, and the kind of healthcare management that positioned basic medical autonomy as family coordination responsibility rather than fundamental healthcare independence deserving respect and protection. Her systematic presentation of this interference as family healthcare coordination and medical assistance rather than autonomy violation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent medical decision-making while building healthcare control that served her authority objectives rather than genuine medical welfare or healthcare autonomy protection. The personal care coordination restrictions that characterized Patricia's systematic approach to hygiene control included strategic limitations on bathroom access, systematic oversight of personal care routines, and the kind of hygiene management that positioned basic personal care independence as household coordination issue rather than fundamental dignity requirement deserving respect and accommodation. Her systematic presentation of these restrictions as household scheduling and resource management rather than dignity violation created additional justification for systematic elimination of independent personal care coordination while building comprehensive control over basic human dignity and personal care autonomy. The culmination of this systematic escalation occurred when Patricia announced the complete banishment from common areas, representing the final stage of her elder exploitation strategy that positioned comprehensive social isolation and dignity elimination as reasonable household management rather than recognizing the systematic abuse and manipulation that had gradually transformed my living situation from family welcome to imprisoned dependency that served her control objectives while violating every principle of family respect and intergenerational dignity that should characterize healthy family relationships and elder care coordination. The moment that would transform Patricia's comfortable assumptions about elderly manipulation into the most expensive education about respect and family loyalty that any entitled daughter-in-law had ever received arrived exactly 72 hours after her banishment declaration. When I made a single phone call that would demonstrate the difference between perceived power and actual authority in ways that would reshape not only her living situation but her entire understanding of who controlled the ground she had been standing on throughout her systematic campaign of elder abuse and family exploitation. What Patricia never suspected during her 18-month campaign of systematic humiliation and control was that the helpless elderly woman she had banished to a back bedroom was actually Eleanor Rose Blackwell, the anonymous founder and CEO of Blackwell Properties, a $280 million real estate empire that included luxury apartment complexes throughout downtown Seattle, controlled residential development in 3 counties, and maintained enough municipal influence and property authority to reshape entire neighborhoods while demonstrating to entitled family members the respect for elders isn't just moral obligation, but practical necessity when you never know who actually owns the world around you. The real estate empire that I had built over 48 years of strategic property acquisition and development coordination began in 1976 when Frank and I purchased our first rental property, a modest duplex in a declining neighborhood that everyone else had written off but that I recognized as prime for gentrification due to its proximity to planned transit development and municipal infrastructure investment. The systematic approach to property analysis, neighborhood development potential assessment, and long-term urban planning coordination that guided our early investments created the foundation for wealth accumulation that would eventually span 3 states while maintaining complete anonymity through carefully structured corporate entities and professional management networks. The corporate structure that enabled my anonymous control over vast real estate holdings included multiple limited liability companies, strategic partnership arrangements, and the kind of legal coordination that protected both personal privacy and business operations from public scrutiny while enabling comprehensive property management and development authority throughout major metropolitan markets. Blackwell Properties operated through 12 subsidiary companies, each managing specific geographic regions and property types while maintaining operational coordination that enabled systematic market influence and development control without revealing the centralized ownership and strategic planning that guided overall business operations and wealth accumulation strategies. The professional network that supported Blackwell Properties operations included relationships with municipal planning departments, commercial development authorities, and the kind of institutional coordination that provided comprehensive market intelligence and regulatory influence throughout targeted development areas. The systematic cultivation of professional relationships with city planners, zoning officials, and development authorities created operational advantages that enabled strategic property acquisition and development coordination while maintaining the political influence and regulatory cooperation necessary for large-scale real estate operations and community development projects. The wealth accumulation that resulted from 4 decades of strategic real estate investment and development had reached $280 million in total asset value by November 2024, including luxury apartment buildings that housed thousands of residents, commercial properties that anchored neighborhood development, and residential developments that shaped community growth throughout the Pacific Northwest region. The systematic approach to property portfolio management, combined with strategic reinvestment and expansion coordination, created cash flow and asset accumulation that enabled immediate action and consequence delivery. When family respect and dignity required protective intervention and justice implementation. The morning of November 15, 2024, marked the beginning of Patricia's education about the reality of power and authority when I made my first phone call to Marcus Webb, the senior property manager who had been coordinating Blackwell Properties operations for over 15 years while maintaining the confidentiality and professional discretion that protected my anonymity and enabled strategic business operations without public attention or family complications that might affect business, relationships, or property management effectiveness. Marcus, I said, using the secure communication line that connected my bedroom to our corporate headquarters downtown, I need you to research a property at 1247 Oak Grove Drive in Millbrook. Find out who owns the building, review the lease agreements, and determine our options for immediate acquisition. Time is essential for this coordination. The property research that Marcus completed within 6 hours revealed that Oak Grove Drive was part of a residential development managed by Morrison Property Group, a mid-level real estate company that specialized in suburban rental coordination and small-scale residential development throughout King County. The building that housed Patricia and Michael's rental unit was owned by Morrison Holdings LLC, which maintained a portfolio of residential properties but lacked the financial resources and market positioning necessary to resist acquisition pressure from well-funded competitors with superior negotiating capability and immediate cash availability. The acquisition negotiation that I initiated through Blackwell Properties legal representatives began with a straightforward purchase offer that exceeded fair market value by 15%, a premium that reflected both urgency and serious intent while demonstrating the kind of immediate financial capability that motivated rapid response and favorable negotiation outcomes. The offer presentation included proof of immediate cash availability, streamlined closing coordination, and the kind of professional arrangement that eliminated financing contingencies and regulatory delays that typically complicated property transactions and extended negotiation periods. Morrison Property Group's response to our acquisition offer revealed both their financial pressure and their complete ignorance of the buyer's identity or motivation for property acquisition. Their immediate acceptance of our premium offer, combined with their coordination of accelerated closing procedures, demonstrated both their need for immediate cash infusion and their failure to recognize that they were selling property to someone whose personal motivation for acquisition would transform their tenants' living situation in ways that would provide comprehensive education about respect, authority, and the consequences of elder exploitation and family abuse. The closing coordination that occurred within 14 days of initial contact established Blackwell Properties as the new owner of the entire residential building at Oak Grove Drive, including Patricia and Michael's rental unit and all associated property management authority, lease coordination, and tenant relationship management that would enable immediate implementation of new policies and tenant management strategies designed to demonstrate the reality of property control and landlord authority in ways that would reshape Patricia's understanding of her living situation and housing security. The lease review that our legal team completed immediately following property acquisition revealed that Patricia and Michael's rental agreement included standard tenant obligations, property maintenance requirements, and the kind of lease provisions that enabled immediate coordination of property improvements, tenant communication, and management policy implementation that would demonstrate new ownership authority while establishing foundation for tenant education about property respect and community standards that reflected appropriate neighbor behavior and family consideration requirements. The property management transition that began immediately following acquisition included comprehensive tenant notification, property improvement coordination, and the kind of management policy implementation that demonstrated new ownership standards, while providing educational opportunities for tenants who might benefit from guidance about community behavior, property respect, and the kind of neighbor consideration that enables harmonious residential community development and positive property management relationships throughout rental property operations and community coordination. The first indication Patricia received about the change in her housing situation arrived in the form of an official notice from Blackwell Properties Management informing all tenants about property acquisition, management transition, and upcoming property improvements that would enhance community standards while ensuring appropriate tenant behavior and property respect throughout the residential development. The notice included information about new management policies, tenant responsibility clarification, and contact information for property management coordination that would enable direct communication about any concerns or questions regarding residential community standards and tenant obligations. The property improvement project that began 3 days after Patricia received her tenant notification included installation of luxury amenities throughout the residential building, comprehensive landscaping enhancement, and the kind of community development that demonstrated new ownership investment while creating residential environment that reflected appropriate community standards and property value enhancement. The systematic coordination of construction activities, contractor management, and improvement implementation created daily evidence of significant financial investment and professional property management that reflected ownership capability and community development commitment. The tenant meeting that Blackwell Properties Management scheduled for all residential units provided opportunity for direct communication about property management policies, community standards, and tenant expectations that would ensure appropriate neighbor behavior and property respect throughout the residential development. The meeting notification included information about mandatory attendance, policy discussion topics, and the kind of community coordination that enabled direct education about tenant responsibilities and community behavior expectations that reflected new ownership standards and property management authority. Patricia's attendance at the mandatory tenant meeting provided her first direct exposure to Blackwell Properties Management Authority and community standards enforcement that would reshape her understanding of tenant obligations and property respect requirements. The meeting presentation included information about noise policies, common area usage standards, and the kind of community behavior expectations that emphasized neighbor consideration and property respect as fundamental tenant obligations rather than optional courtesies that could be ignored without consequence or accountability. The revelation that occurred during the tenant meeting question period would provide Patricia with the most shocking education about identity, authority, and consequences that any manipulative family member had ever received when the senior property manager announced that ownership questions and concerns could be directed to Eleanor Rose Blackwell, the founding CEO of Blackwell Properties, who maintained personal interest in ensuring appropriate community standards and tenant behavior throughout all residential properties under company management and development authority. The moment of recognition that transformed Patricia's face from confident entitlement to shocked comprehension occurred when she realized that the helpless elderly woman she had systematically abused and banished from common areas was actually the property owner who now controlled her housing situation, rental costs, and residential security in ways that would enable immediate demonstration of the consequences that result from elder exploitation and family abuse when the targeted victim possesses comprehensive authority and resource capability for justice delivery and consequence implementation. The immediate policy implementation that followed Patricia's recognition included new residential standards that emphasized family respect, intergenerational consideration, and the kind of community behavior that reflected appropriate elder treatment and family cooperation rather than exploitation and abuse. The specific provisions that addressed common area usage, noise coordination, and residential behavior standards created comprehensive framework for appropriate neighbor interaction while establishing accountability measures for tenants who violated community standards or demonstrated inappropriate behavior toward elderly residents. The consequence delivery that Patricia experienced over the following months included systematic enforcement of community standards, comprehensive monitoring of tenant behavior, and the kind of residential oversight that ensured appropriate elder treatment and family respect throughout the residential community. The coordination of these policies through professional property management created systematic accountability while providing educational opportunities for tenants who might benefit from guidance about respect, consideration, and appropriate community behavior that honored elderly wisdom and family cooperation rather than exploitation and abuse. The long-term impact of Patricia's education about respect and authority included fundamental changes in her behavior toward elderly family members, systematic improvement in household cooperation, and the kind of family relationship development that prioritized dignity and consideration rather than control and exploitation. The comprehensive nature of her learning experience created lasting change while providing community example of the consequences that result from elder abuse and the importance of maintaining respect and consideration for elderly family members regardless of perceived power or authority differences. The ultimate lesson that Patricia learned through her comprehensive education about authority and consequences was that elderly individuals often possess sophisticated capability, professional networks, and resource authority that enable immediate justice delivery for exploitation attempts while maintaining community protection and elder dignity throughout family relationship coordination and intergenerational care management. The assumption that advanced age equals vulnerability and manipulation opportunity represents dangerous miscalculation that can result in devastating consequences for individuals who violate elderly dignity and family respect requirements. Remember, respect your elders not just because it's morally right, but because you never know when the helpless grandmother you're mistreating might actually control the roof over your head and the ground you're standing on. Sometimes the most powerful lesson about family loyalty comes from discovering who you've been disrespecting, and Patricia learned that lesson in the most expensive way possible. 6 months after Patricia's world-changing education about respect and real authority, the transformation in our family dynamics had been so complete and profound that even I, someone who had spent decades observing human behavior and consequence delivery, found myself occasionally amazed by how quickly entitled attitudes can change when confronted with undeniable reality about power structures and the practical necessity of treating elderly family members with genuine dignity rather than condescending manipulation. The immediate changes in Patricia's behavior following her discovery that the helpless woman she had banished to a back bedroom actually owned the building she lived in were so dramatic that Michael initially worried his wife might be experiencing some kind of psychological breakdown. Her systematic transformation from controlling manipulator to apologetic family member included not only the elimination of all household restrictions and common area limitations, but active coordination of comfort improvements and family consideration that demonstrated genuine understanding of respect requirements rather than strategic performance designed to avoid additional consequences. The family dinner conversations that resumed in the weeks following Patricia's education about authority and consequences revealed a woman who had fundamentally reconsidered her approach to intergenerational relationships and elder family member treatment. Her systematic questions about my business experience, genuine interest in my professional achievements, and authentic appreciation for my life wisdom created family interaction patterns that prioritized learning and respect rather than control and condescension. The conversations that emerged during these family meals demonstrated real curiosity about elderly perspective and family history rather than the patronizing tolerance that had previously characterized her interaction with older family members. The household coordination changes that Patricia implemented throughout our shared living space included systematic elimination of all previous restrictions, active accommodation of my preferences and routines, and the kind of family consideration that positioned elderly comfort as household priority rather than inconvenient complication requiring management and control. Her transformation of the back bedroom into a comfortable suite with enhanced privacy and amenities, combined with her coordination of kitchen access and common area usage that prioritized my convenience, demonstrated practical understanding of elder respect requirements rather than superficial courtesy designed to maintain appearances. The community reputation impact of Patricia's education extended beyond our family household into neighborhood and social circles where her previous behavior toward elderly family members had been observed and noted by friends and neighbors. The systematic changes in her public treatment of older adults, combined with her active participation in community elder support initiatives, created social positioning that reflected genuine character development rather than strategic image management. Her volunteer coordination with local senior programs and systematic advocacy for elderly rights within community organizations demonstrated authentic commitment to elder dignity, rather than calculated reputation repair. The professional development changes that characterized Patricia's approach to her yoga instruction business included systematic incorporation of senior-focused classes, specialized programming for elderly participants, and the kind of service coordination that demonstrated genuine appreciation for older adult capability and wellness needs rather than age-based limitation assumptions. Her development of intergenerational fitness programming and systematic outreach to elderly community members created business expansion that served authentic community needs, while providing practical demonstration of her transformed understanding about aging and elderly capability. The financial management transformation that occurred within our family household included Patricia's systematic coordination with me about property investment opportunities, genuine interest in real estate development principles, and the kind of financial planning collaboration that positioned elderly wisdom as valuable resource rather than outdated information requiring patient tolerance. Her questions about property management, systematic attention to investment strategies, and authentic appreciation for decades of business experience created family financial coordination that honored intergenerational knowledge transfer rather than dismissing elderly financial expertise as irrelevant to modern economic coordination. The relationship development with Michael that emerged following Patricia's comprehensive education about respect and authority included systematic improvement in family communication, enhanced cooperation about household management, and the kind of partnership coordination that positioned both spouses as equal contributors rather than hierarchical authority structure that marginalized one partner's input and decision-making capability. Their collaboration about family financial planning, systematic coordination of household responsibilities, and authentic partnership in child-rearing created marriage dynamic that reflected mutual respect, rather than control-based relationship management. The parenting philosophy changes that Patricia implemented with their twin daughters included systematic emphasis on elder respect, intergenerational relationship appreciation, and the kind of character development that prioritized family loyalty and community consideration rather than material accumulation and competitive social positioning. Her coordination of regular visits and meaningful interaction with elderly community members, combined with systematic teaching about aging dignity and family cooperation, created childhood education that built character foundation for respectful adult relationships rather than entitled attitudes that devalue elderly wisdom and community contribution. The broader family relationship healing that occurred throughout our extended family network included Patricia's systematic outreach to previously marginalized elderly relatives, genuine efforts to rebuild damaged relationships, and the kind of family coordination that prioritized intergenerational connection rather than convenient social coordination that excluded older family members from important events and decision-making processes. Her coordination of family gatherings that honored elderly participation, systematic inclusion of older relatives in holiday planning, and authentic appreciation for family history created family culture that valued wisdom and experience rather than dismissing elderly contribution as outdated obligation. The community education impact that resulted from Patricia's transformation included systematic sharing of her experience with other families facing intergenerational living challenges, genuine advocacy for elder respect within social networks, and the kind of community leadership that promoted family cooperation rather than age-based segregation that isolated elderly individuals from family participation and community contribution. Her presentations about family harmony and elder dignity, combined with systematic mentoring of younger family members about respectful intergenerational relationships, created community influence that strengthened elderly protection while promoting authentic family cooperation. The ultimate lesson that Patricia learned through her comprehensive education about respect, authority, and family loyalty was that elderly individuals deserve dignity not because of what they might control or own, but because of their fundamental humanity and the wisdom they've accumulated through decades of life experience. The discovery that I possessed significant wealth and property authority served as the dramatic catalyst for her behavioral transformation. But the lasting change occurred when she recognized that respect for elders represents basic human decency, rather than strategic necessity based on power assessment. The story of how Patricia's attempt to banish me to a back bedroom resulted in her learning that I owned the entire building became legendary within our community, serving as both cautionary tale about elder mistreatment and inspiring example of the reality that respect and dignity should never be conditional on apparent vulnerability or perceived power imbalance. Remember, treat every elderly person with the respect and dignity they deserve, not because you never know who might secretly control your world, but because honoring our elders is the foundation of civilized society and authentic family love. What's the most important lesson your grandparents or elderly family members taught you? Share it in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about justice, respect, and the power of family loyalty.